Of course, this week, due to the MLB playoffs, AEW Dynamite aired on Tuesday instead of Wednesday and aired at 9 p.m. instead of 8 p.m. So 1 hour head-to-head with NXT. Let's talk about AEW Dynamite.
Well, that's right. NXT went 8-10. AEW went 9-11. 08 or whatever the overrun was, so at legged tries. So we'll see when we analyze it, but theoretically, one would have thought they'd have picked up a few thousand stray wrestling fans at 10 o'clock that were already watching television. One would think.
You would have to know they were there. You'd have to know they were airing on a Tuesday night. That's the problem. From what I saw based on social media reaction, they did a really bad job of letting the fans know that they were going to be on a Tuesday night.
But then again, all these AEW fans live on the social media, wouldn't they? And isn't it their responsibility, just like when they're supposed to record the program after the program to make sure they see the program? That's their responsibility. They ought to know, but shouldn't they check these TV schedules? As the announcers used to say, check your local listings. I think it's their responsibility, but I think the fans have dropped the ball here, Brian.
Well, there was a lot of ball on that's no transition at all, but there was a lot of things happening on Dynamite. Why don't we get to that?
A few of these guys look like their balls haven't dropped yet. But anyway, so the show started as they've been doing. Before, they would just jump into a goddamn match. Ring the bell, here we go. Right now, they're going to the garage with the ominous music so that the plumber can talk to us. Old Plumber Moxley can give his weekly audition for an indie film contract of some description. What the fuck is he saying? He was cutting a promo on Bryan Danielson, and apparently his point was it's got to be this way. What way and why? What is he saying, Brian? Do you understand any? It's great acting if you knew what movie you were watching.
I mean, it's great acting in the sense that he clearly memorized a bunch of lines and learned a bunch of big words and really wanted to find a way to use them in this wrestling promo, but it goes nowhere. It doesn't really work for Moxley. Moxley shouldn't be using big words that go nowhere. It's this guy filleting himself and Tony allowing it. You have to wonder if he does want to go to Hollywood. This is all just bad acting. And again, why is Moxley the badass? What is he even talking about? He goes on for a minute and it's always the Riddler act. He never says anything. I have to do this. Why? Why? Explain anything.
It's like, seriously, if you went to one of these fancy Dan modern day space age multiplex cinemas and they got 18 theaters and you just bought a ticket and just wandered into a theater, you don't know what the fucking movie is or that you're seeing and you're already in the middle of it. And this guy's saying this shit and you're like, and then Bryan Danielson was in another back with video that looked like it was shot on somebody's old VHS camcorder, and he cut a promo in return on Claudio and the plumber and the whole 9 yards. And we'll get to them later on. So then Darby Allin's entrance was the first thing live that the people saw. And he came out and he was pissed off, and without any further ado, he calls Brody King out right now. And I guess Saturday night on the show that nobody else watches, that Brody King jumped him or whatever, right? He's answered the... Remember Darby... No. What? No?
The footage they showed, everything was from 2022.
Well, I saw that they were showing stuff from years ago, but I thought they said something about this guy, because Darby issued an open challenge. Did Brody King just answer the open challenge, but he didn't jump him, except for what he jumped him 2 years ago? Why didn't Darby bother to get even in this amount of time? Was he lulling him into a false sense of security?
The more Darby talks and gives this weird homeless inspirational speech, the more I don't like him.
Yeah. But well, this was another double turn. Because he called Brody King out They showed Brody King, fucking him up a couple of years ago, and Brody King came out, and Darby starts doing the promo about how they used to be friends. They were on the indies. They stayed in crackhead motels this guy's so proud of being a fucking shiftless, irresponsible, homeless bum all his life. But can't they act like anybody's a star? Did everybody have to exist in cesspools and fucking flop houses with this guy? So Darby's upset because after a bunch of talk of the indies and how Darby's the one that told Tony Khan to hire Brody King. So the noted heel in the House of Black got hired due to a babyface telling the boss, yeah, he's a great guy.
That's the problem. The whole thing is we used to fight on the indies, and then we would hang out at the hotel.
Yes.
And then I told him to hire you.
It's all inside bullshit that it does not pertain in any way to any of the stories they tell on the TV show until they come out and do one of these inside promos. And Darby has actually said he is the face of AEW. And he's got to be the face. He's got the responsibility. He's getting these people hired. He's dead. Brody King comes out and answers his challenge or whatever he did to him. And Brody King calmly and normally, instead of having this fucking mental breakdown that Darby is having, yelling and pissed and pacing, Brody says, you want to be the face of AEW, but what's going to happen to AEW if you kill yourself on Mount Everest? Or you get hit by then the AEW's face is dead. You've got a death wish and you'll fuck it all up. Calmly and matter-of-factly, the heel becomes the voice of reason.
I was going to say, what a reasonable, thoughtful guy. You almost wonder if he's speaking for The Office.
Yes, and he actually said you need somebody to save you from yourself. The heel becomes the calm voice of reason while the babyface is having a meltdown. So then Darby throws a hissy fit. Well, then let's go right now. Go ahead, you want to take my spot? Take my spot, put me out of my misery. The heel is calm and rational. The face is a hysterical, whiny bitch. And then Darby says, go ahead. Hoo, hoo, hoo. He starts barking at Brody King, and he's sitting in the corner barking at the fucking guy. And Brody King says, get up. And Darby gets up and slaps him in the face. And this guy is twice his weight and a foot taller, so Brody King just knocks him goofy with one shot and turns babyface. It was a double turn. The Darby, the babyface, is a hysterical, irrational, screaming lunatic here, and the heel makes perfect sense and is calm until he gets slapped in the face. Then he knocks Darby goofy, and then Darby pulls out a rock. Just a rock, and hits...
I've never seen that in wrestling before.
It hits Brody heel. Hits Brody King in the mouth with it, and he spits up the blood. He's bleeding from the mouth, and security comes in. So the final act was the alleged babyface hitting the alleged heel in the face with a rock, despite the fact that the heel was barehanded and unarmed. So that was that.
Tony D'Angelo, the double switch there, it was his hometown. So at least you had that. This was Darby's hometown, wasn't it? This is Washington.
Well, so that's why he decided to show his ass? What? I don't...
One of the wrestlers I wish they can curse. Who the fuck are you to lecture me about anything, Darby?
Yeah, what success has this guy had in his life past a billionaire giving him a job, making a ton of money suddenly, that before he was sleeping in his car and an irresponsible fucking juvenile delinquent?
Get Brody King credit. He made so much sense.
Yeah, I don't want to see you do this to yourself, and you'll let the company down. Oh, you motherfucker!
How selfish are you? You're the face of the company. You're going to go die on Mount Everest.
Yeah. He just will have to come up there with an ice pick and chip your ass out.
This could be his new thing after the House of Black, the thoughtful giant.
but seriously, these guys obviously don't know how to portray themselves. They don't know how they come off to normal people on television. People, the small subgroup of the audience out there that is predisposed to like these people no matter what. Past that, none of them have a clear picture of how they look and how they should be presented, and there's nobody telling them any different. And speaking of how people should be presented, so let me get this straight. Renee Moxley Good was in the back with Lance Archer and Jake Roberts, who we have not seen. We've seen Lance Archer in the last year, I guess, right? A time or two. Have we seen Jake Roberts with him in 2 years?
No, we saw Lance Archer pop up randomly. I think had a couple matches, no Jake. We heard Jake renewed his contract, and then we never saw Jake again. But it seems now he's a player.
There they are, and Don Fallis walks in and does the promo for him, and they've concluded a talent exchange, and Lance Archer is now a member of Don's family. And they walk off, and Renee asks who Jake got, and Jake won't say who Jake got.
Or what he's got.
Don could have just come out and signed Lance Archer, and nobody would have given a shit because it's been so long since we have seen them together.
Well, obviously, based on what happened later in the show, they're using this as a chance for Jake to elevate a group of young wrestlers that they see a lot in.
Are you fucking... Well, wait till you hear who that group is, folks. More on that in a minute. And by the way, the announcers for the show were Sockface, Tony Schiavone, and Jeff Jarrett because Taz had knee surgery and is part of the...
Mets are on again. The Mets are on again against AEW. That's what it is.
Well, I think he, probably said, hey, it might be a good time now for me to get some body parts replaced so I don't have to be on this show because it's getting stinky, but we don't doubt the legitimacy of his surgery. But this
is Vince McMahon wearing a neck brace to court. The Mets are in the playoffs. He wants to stay home. I'll get my knee surgery now.
Well, if it was eyeball surgery, then that would shoot your theory straight to hell because he wouldn't be able to watch. But since it's knee surgery, he doesn't need to be able to walk to watch baseball. So you might have something. But you know what they didn't have, Brian?
An audience.
No, any common fucking sense, because the next match was the long-awaited showdown between Hologram and Commander. And I wrote at this point so they know that nobody's going to watch this show. And they're just trying to fill the time.
Can I stop you right there?
Yes, and then I'll go on.
AEW's had an issue getting new people in the door. That really hasn't happened. Retaining the audience they have throughout a show. And in this case, maybe even announcing that the show would be on another night efficiently enough that people knew. If you knew you're on a different night, a different time slot, up against strong competition, the playoffs, and of course NXT, and it's the go-home show for your pay-per-view, do you put stuff that doesn't matter on the show because you're out of your normal time slot? Or do you try to load it up with stuff for the pay-per-view even though you're out of your normal time slot?
And there can be a third option because I have never, any TV that I ever wrote or helped write or whatever, you never want to just do TV that doesn't matter. And there's got to be something that you can do to justify putting something on that will help an individual talent or build something for later or whatever. But at the same time, if you know that because of circumstances beyond your control, a switch in time or preemptions on many stations or a switch in day, whatever, that your audience is going to be down, you don't turn on Dusty on that show. You don't do the big goddamn angle on that show, but you still, because you're going to be back in your regular time the next week, and you can do stuff in this program that you can show back the highlights of the next week, or now you can put on YouTube, or you can put out on social media. So there's not a reason to totally just give up and, you've jumped overboard, just take a big breath and go with it, right? Try to swim and tread water at least until you get back in the boat, and then you can make some progress. And to put Hologram against Commander on what is allegedly your flagship show, even though it's on a different night and time, who the fuck, the smallest group of AEW fans would give a shit that these two guys that nobody cares about, nobody even knows what they fucking look like, are going to have a lucha match and do a bunch of fucking cartwheels. Except for Tony, because Hologram is his gimmick idea. But so, if you're on a new night, then you might accidentally get some new eyeballs on the show, and maybe they might see something. But when anybody looks at perception, and as Vince McMahon used to say, perception is reality. If you're looking at the difference in the two wrestling programs or wrestling companies, with WWE and or AEW, and NXT had some crummy looking people on it too, but when you tune into this show with an empty building, the arena's so dark you can see the lightning bugs flying around. And they're doing cover pitches with the announcers shooting the ceiling because they can't pan a crowd that ain't there. And they've got two guys in the ring that look like children in Halloween masks doing stuff they worked out on their trampoline. It just looks fucking low rent, low budget, low class, low secondary. Does that make any sense to you?
It does, and even for the people that I think will just look at what you say and think you're being too harsh, I think even if you're a fan of these two guys and their style, you need to be able to recognize how low rent it looks. And also, I mean, just when I say it, both of their looks, but they're both tiny. They're tiny. God, what are they, 5'7" at the most? At the most. And they're skinny. They're really skinny. And they're just doing moves to each other for no reason. There is a fan base for this stuff, but they don't watch TV. And they didn't watch for this. Not to play spoiler.
I don't know that anybody's going to be shocked by that spoiler, but basically after a long time where Tony was, I'm sure, watching with bated breath on the monitor in the back, Hologram won because he apparently also has the longest active winning streak in AEW. I think I saw that graphic. Because
and it's his Dynamite debut.
Basically, Tony's got a new pockets. It's a new little pet thing because he thinks the gimmick is great for his internet friends. But then...
Well, it's his gimmick. That's the other thing. Pockets wasn't something he invented. This is something he invented.
Oh, he wishes he had invented pockets, though. It's that childish. But nevertheless, then here comes Jake Roberts out to the stage, to the entranceway, and he stood there and watched Rush and Rigor Mortis and another Mexican fellow jump both of these guys and clear the ring out. And the announcers sort of worked out verbally on their own that now Jake is their manager. That's the LaFuckers and Goobers group, right? Is that what they call themselves?
Well, Roosh was. Were the other two in that? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Were they ever managed by Don Callis?
No, that's another thing. Is that said it was a talent exchange?
Yeah.
But so anyway, now Jake Roberts is the manager of 3 random luchadors, because Jake is noted for being a master of that style. And the fans are just sitting there going, what the fuck is this going on? And Jake didn't even walk to the ring. He may not have had a long enough tube on his oxygen tank. But that's okay. Anyway, is that enough on Hologram and Commander?
I mean, that's enough on the match. I'm intrigued by the idea of Jake Roberts managing a team he's going to tower over. Roosh, the Beast Mortis, and Drolistico. Whose idea was this and why?
Well, I think so. Jake can teach him psychology as soon as he learns Spanish.
Let's get Jake Roberts when he is the hardest to listen to that he's ever been, and have him do promos for the Latino wrestlers who can't do promos.
But he didn't do a promo. He didn't even fucking speak. Don Callis did most of the promo earlier, so he's gonna. I think it's a coaching type of thing where as soon as Jake learns Spanish so he can communicate with these guys, and as long as he brings his oxygen so he's got enough voice to tell them the things that they're going to ignore, then he'll be able to teach them something.
I'm so intrigued by the idea behind this. It'll be a talent swap. Oh, is Jake going to manage Takeshita? That's interesting. Okay. Or Fletcher? I don't really see it. No. He's managing three guys Don Callis has never managed before. It makes no sense.
What about Hobbs? What did they do to him? Did they goddamn remove his fucking kidneys or something? What kind of injury could he have had?
Did you hear the rumor with Ray Phoenix? Because we heard that Ray Phoenix and Penta were going to sign with WWE, the Lucha Brothers. The story is, or at least people are thinking it, that because he was injured so often, Tony's going to extend his contract to prevent him from being able to sign with WWE.
Yes.
Fair game or any problem with that?
Well, no, at the money that he's paying a lot of these guys and they're off for months at a time, and he's still paying them. Goddamn, if you sign for 3 years, work for me for 3 fucking years. Don't work for me for a year and a half over a 3-year period. I think that's perfectly fair. Now, if you're fucking with a guy over 2 months or something, then that's a little dodgy. But anyway.
Well, Jim, Jake Roberts didn't have too much to say. He kind of just did a thumbs up or whatever the hell he did from the stage. Jake Roberts, known for his Fonzie mannerisms. Perhaps he just woke up. Perhaps Jake had a good night's sleep.
Well, he did look like he was still in the land of somnambulism. He did look like he had a little crustiness around his eyes, or maybe it was his nostrils. But I'll tell you what, you won't have anything crusty on your Helix Sleep mattress, folks, because they come to you in a box brand new. And we have been talking about our friends at Helix for so long now. Everybody in the cult of Cornette, most of them, I should say, are right now laying on, sitting on, eating on, or getting down on a Helix mattress because they'll stand up to any kind of wear and tear, even if you're corpulently fat or even if you're bony and skinny and you've got sharp elbows and knees and collarbones that make holes in normal mattresses. The Helix mattress will hold up underneath your abnormal geometry and skeletal figuring. Geometry, it should be geology. Or maybe it's biology. Well, nevertheless, if you'd like to go through many of the bodily habits that you normally do every day, there's no place better than on a Helix mattress. Brian, I think you can agree that, well, the Helix, whether it's the Helix for kids or the Helix for fat people, or the Helix for people who like to sleep on their face, or the Helix for people who sweat profusely or ones who shiver, shaking like a dog shitting peach seeds.
Just Helix for everyone. And yes, we have a few in the house. We love them. And some of the listeners just recently on Twitter sending photos of their Helix Sleep mattress boxes arriving.
Yes, and then later on, I think you should send photos of your wife or girlfriend laying on the Helix Sleep mattress so that we know that they're being put to good use and potentially in a variety of negligees or lingerie.
Spread eagle.
Well, what you do with birds is your own business, but I will tell you that the bald eagle is a protected species, and I think that means that you can't have carnal knowledge either. But folks, whether you got night sweats because you're feeling guilty about something or you're afraid somebody's going to catch you, Well, these mattresses will cool you down. They'll make your conscience feel better. And if you got back pain, they'll slide you one of these stiff ones where your spine will be aligned and your liver won't quiver. And all the other variety of the deluxe collection or the elite collection or whatever, all you do is go to helixsleep.com and you take the little quiz, how you like to sleep, who you like to sleep with, give them the phone numbers of the people that are most likely to agree to sleep with you, and then they'll send you the mattress. Now, you had to do that too, Brian. You had to go through your whole little black book and give them all those numbers.
You don't have to do that. I didn't have to do that. You won't have to do that. But you will have to get a good night's sleep with Helix Sleep.
Yes, and then your mattress comes in a box, and you just open it up, and it goes poof right onto the mattress or the bed frame there, and then you fall into a cloud of comfort. And if you go to helixsleep.com/JCE, you got to use that code. Then you're going to get 20% off all mattress orders in the month of October. 20% off all the mattress orders at helixsleep.com/JCE. And then when you finish your dinner and you finish feeding the dog and you finish putting the garbage out and you're ready to turn in for the night and the sun has dropped below the horizon, then you'll lay your head down on this beautiful Helix, your whole body, actually. You can use the whole thing. You paid for it. And you'll lay that body down and you'll go to sleep and good night, 'cause my Helix is right. I'm so comfy I could shit. Boy, Helix is really it.
Once again, helixsleep.com/JCE.
Yes.
Great mattresses. You don't need the shit. You just need to sit or lay. And let's lay our way onto the rest of Dynamite. Helix Sleep, though, a wonderful mattress.
Yes, yes. Well, you know who needs a mattress to hang out in his house and just sleep and just enjoy all the money that he's making now for no apparent reason? Our friend old Danny Garcia. Daniel Garcia came out, great Brian, last on Dynamite and answered the question of the ages, averted a crisis, disaster is not going to take place. Daniel Garcia is staying with AEW, baby. Aren't you relieved?
You know, watching this, I'd be relieved I didn't see him on TV for a while. This was cringy to me. He can't talk. He doesn't have the voice. He can't pull it off, and everything's just rah-rah bullshit. I'm staying with AEW. Why don't you disclose how much Tony's paying you? If you want to make it sound like you're doing some charity work.
Yes, I'll have you know I'm not going to forget the children in the streets of Calcutta. I'm right here with you in this fight. I'll be making $7 million or whatever.
You know, he came out there in mom jeans, dressed like, George Michael in the Faith video or something.
Well, that's what...
it ain't working. It ain't working. This ain't going to work.
A white T-shirt, a black leather vest, and blue jeans. He looked like anybody showing up for work to pump somebody's septic tank. It was kind of like the Ed Norton look, wasn't it? All he needs is the floppy hat.
I hadn't thought of that. A lot of people compared him to some like bootleg Steve Austin or Stone Cold, but Ed Norton works. Yeah, the vest.
Yeah. Hey, Ralphie boy.
Hey, Tony.
He looks like he just climbed up out of a manhole. So again, the big entrance where he walks down and then he jumps off the ramp so that he can shake some hands on the way out. And
what will he say? That whole thing. What will he say? We have no idea what this guy we're giving a live mic to who hasn't been on the show in a couple months will say right now. I hate that shit. I hate it.
That's the thing is, what was he supposed to be going to say? Because we didn't know why he's been gone. That's the whole thing. As Buddy Landell would say, this nothing happening guy walks out just dressed like any fucking body and starts trying to talk. And his opening line was, "How you guys doing tonight?" he thanks Tony Khan for giving him time on television. When's the last time a major star thanked the promoter for giving them time on television? It's your pleasure that I'm on your fucking show. But his whole promo was, I sat at home thinking about what's best for me. I didn't want to be a guy that disappears with no explanation. I'm going to look you in the eye and tell you what I'm going to do. And you know what? I'm Daniel Garcia. I can do what I want to do because I'm one of the best wrestlers in the world. He said that with a straight face. So he's both a humble and braggadocious babyface.
He's not in the top 50. No disrespect, but don't call yourself the best wrestler in the world if you're not even remotely in the conversation.
It's not disrespect to acknowledge reality. And is he a better professional wrestler than you or me are as we sit here right now? Probably. But not as the field goes overall. And the point is, it was another inside promo that talked in circles because, Brian, right as he builds up and says, so I've decided I'm going to stay where the best wrestle in AEW. And people go, well, yay. But
they didn't know he was gone.
They have never said a word on this television program about Daniel Garcia's contract being up or contract being renewed or him staying or going or made any reference. And apparently, MJF narrowly escaped having to do a job on the pay-per-view for this tin can. When now we see in retrospect, the reason why that Daniel Garcia didn't beat MJF was because his contract was coming up and they didn't know if he was staying. So MJF gets a win, and then this fucking idiot double tombstone pile drives him off the top rope or whatever, and MJF is gone. We haven't seen him yet, but we haven't seen Garcia since then because his contract was coming up and he hadn't signed again. So he couldn't come out and crow about beating MJF, the most important guy in the company, on television because, so what the fuck? If you follow our programs and or the social media, you would know that they've been talking about whether he's going to go to the WWE or stay there. Yeah. And I believe I said the WWE, if they made an offer for him, it'd be just to bid Tony up because what are they going to do with this fucking guy? But the point is, they've never set this up. He's talking to people assuming that they know when it's never been on the television show. And they do that all the time. And then he goes on a tirade that he's a new Daniel Garcia that AEW can build a future on. And I'll carry the company on by. And he's raving delusionally about beating everybody and being the champion and getting over. And I'm afraid that this is a young man that is setting himself up for potential disappointment in the future. Is my comment on that. The fuck? You may comment if you like.
They have to grab whatever talent they can. They have to keep whoever they can. Obviously, he feels empowered by the contract, and
he fits the definition of whoever they can.
But you're right. It's something we talked about. And yeah, we have a lot of listeners, but you can't book your show for the podcasts. Why was he doing this promo at all? Why wasn't he just out there? You haven't seen me since I kicked the shit out of MJF. I've been thinking about who I want to kick the shit out of next. Nothing. Instead, it's this drama that wasn't needed on the show.
Or he could have told the story.
An explanation that wasn't needed. Just had to sign the contract and continue on.
He could have told the story instead of talking in circles. And assuming that everybody already knew what he was talking about. Yeah, because he can't talk in a straight line.
No, and it just doesn't.
It's a young person that needs to be on local TV, if that, or whatever. But the point is, he could have said, I haven't been here since I beat him. He didn't even remind everybody, I beat MJF. That didn't come out. You haven't seen me since I beat MJF at whatever pay-per-view. And the reason for that is because my contract was coming up for renewal and I had to make serious life decisions about where I wanted to go. And then just tell everybody what the fuck, instead of the circles and the assuming that everybody is smart and knows. I don't think a lot of these people ain't smart or they wouldn't be watching this show. All right. Can we skip Mercedes and Camille with Renee Moxley good?
Yeah, I mean, Renee did the Mercedes intro, which upset Mercedes. And Mercedes had the usual awful Mercedes promo. The usual awful Mercedes promo.
Well, we're going to see more awful Mercedes later on. But, and then they showed, by the way, they showed Garcia, getting back to Garcia for a minute. They showed him walking down the fucking hallway in the back after he's made this big pronouncement. And all the people clapping for him and high-fiving him were jobbers that never get on, including Colt Cabana. His face actually got on television. And then Shapoopy walks up, another baby face, and tells Garcia, or his phone tells Garcia he's glad he's staying in AEW, and apparently they're going to wrestle. So again, two more baby faces are going to wrestle for a championship that I can't even remember which the fuck one it is.
Wait, hold on, neither one of them are champions. That's if Shibata beats Jack Perry.
Oh, that's Shapoopy has to win the title first, and then he'll defend against the Zabada.
That's right.
Oh, Christ on a cracker.
Clearly.
All right. I'm sorry, I'll keep these things straight. I've only got a giant pad of paper, and I've run through all my pins trying to figure out. And you ought to see the Venn diagram and the chart on the wall with the strings and the pins in it. What did you think about Willow versus Saraya versus Nyla Rose versus Jamie Hayter?
Ooh. I only watched a little bit of it.
With Harley Cameron in the corner and Maria May on color.
And apparently this is because it was going to be Britt Baker against someone, with the winner getting a title shot at the pay-per-view, and then Britt Baker, they said, got sick and couldn't make it to TV. Or she found out she wasn't winning at the pay-per-view. One or the other. I forget what it was.
So they decided to throw in a four-way, because how can just one person take her place?
You know, I always say it, I'll say it again, and I thought it also during the promo afterwards. Willow Nightingale's really good. I wish she was in WWE.
Yeah, well, I watched a bit of this because they were using the tables and the chairs too, by the way, in the girls' match. And in the middle of the thing, for apparently no good reason, Penelope Ford interfered. Remember Penelope Pit Stop? She's back, or she's still there, apparently.
She's still there. She never left.
Have they been paying this girl for the past 2 or 3 years just to hang out at home and wait on future instructions?
I could be wrong, but I believe she's someone who may have gone back to school, continue her education on AEW's Dynamite. I could be wrong, though, but I think she's one of the names I heard.
All righty. Well, anyway, she got in a fight with one of the girls, and off they went. And then Saraya and her stooge Harley Cameron were trying to slide a table in the ring, and they couldn't get the table in the ring.
Well, that was Harley Cameron's fault. That was all her fault.
But because the leg dropped out, and she's trying to push the table into the ring underneath the bottom rope with the legs folded out where it's bumping up against the apron. And they finally, the cameras had to get off of it. They shot everything else. They shot people laying on the ground out of the ring. They shot fucking the concession stand. And finally, they pulled it back out to the floor, and then Harley folded up and got it slid in. And then this thing fell apart. Willow came first, and Harley, by the way, wasn't really in the match, but she's in the ring. Because it's anything goes. No DQ, lazy booking. So Willow goes to double clothesline Saraya and Harley, but Saraya just ignored the clothesline. It didn't go down, didn't do anything, and stood there while Willow ran and grabbed Harley and ran Harley towards Saraya, and then Saraya took a couple steps to run into Harley on purpose. And then Willow powerbombed Harley, But then Saraya was trying to schoolgirl, not schoolboy, but schoolgirl, Willow, but she couldn't figure out how to do it. She almost did it from the wrong side, and Willow had to spin around and fall over her 2 count. And then Willow Death Valley drivered Saraya through a table and put Saraya on top of Harley and pinned both of them, even though Harley wasn't a participant in the match. And then Willow went up to the stage, but Maria May met her, and they had a face-off of some description, and then Maria swung, but Willow blocked it, so Maria just headbutted Willow and knocked her out and whipped her with the title belt. What a fucking mess.
When did Willow get potatoed? Was it in a match or with the belt?
Who could tell? I mean, it may have been a double clothesline that she gave when they didn't know whether they were supposed to take it or not take it. Who knows what the fuck was going on? Anyway, that was that. Did you love the debut of Cody Chhun?
He got a little more in than I thought he would have. I was surprised by that.
Chhun. Boy, back in the old days when they took out newspaper ads, he'd be begging to be fucking misspelled, wouldn't he? Cody Chhun versus Light Switch Jay White with Juice Robinson in his corner. And yeah, old Cody got a little bit in, and then Jay White won, and then he got the microphone. And what did this last, Brian? About 12, 15 minutes? Or did it just seem like it?
Every time he talks, he starts marching around and, I will do, he just keeps talking about himself.
He's Robin Leach on nitrous.
It's not good. Juice was great at ringside. Everything he did. Whenever there was a slow moment early on, Juice would all of a sudden be up on the apron. I thought he was really good here.
The only time we get to see Juice do anything is when Jay White is gone, so I wish Jay White would leave again. Why are they convinced that Juice is the sidekick and Jay is the top guy?
Because Jay was the bigger star in New Japan.
Who gives a shit?
Tony Khan. See, I got you there.
Well, that's true. So, again, Juice...
Antonio Kanoki, that's who.
At least somebody would want to watch or listen to Juice Robinson because of his natural quirky charisma as opposed to Jay White.
Against Adam Page. So now Jay White's the babyface. Right?
Well, I guess. So, then apparently Hook now he was in the back and he was demanding that whoever jumped my father, reveal yourself to me so I can smite you. And he's doing that promo. And then old Pip Sabian comes into the shot like he's running or backing up from somebody and bumps into Hook. And Hook snatches him and says, "Is it you?" Or whatever. And Pip's like, I know nothing. And he runs off. And then you see that he's been running away from Christian Cage and Mama Wayne and Nick Plain.
And they establish that Hook won't snitch. Because Christian says, "Did you see Pip Sabian?" And he said, "Nope."
Yeah. But why, if Pip Sabian is running from Christian Cage, then if he's on the wrong side of Christian Cage, that would make him a babyface. But babyfaces don't run like scared little pussies. So what is this guy? They're just having Pip run from Christian in a variety of ways.
And this has been going on for a while, too.
A while.
And it goes nowhere. They just keep running.
So Cage at this point says that they're looking for Pip Sabian. Have you seen him? No, I haven't seen him because he's not a snitch. But then Cage says, well, we've lost Dino Douche to a serious medical situation, so I can sympathize with you for losing your father. And they walked off. And the only newsworthy thing in this is apparently the lizard is really sick.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what happened, but we heard that Luchasaurus or Kill Switch had, I think, pneumonia, and it's caused a series of issues where he's on oxygen. I read something, I want to say Brian Alvarez wrote it, and I may be getting it wrong, or maybe he said it and I read the quote, but it was, he had to stop wrestling because he has to get over this, and he won't be wrestling anytime soon. He just returned to the gym, and he won't be returning to the gym anytime soon. So when you hear that, you think it sounds really bad. And, get well soon. Jeez, that sounds awful.
This company is remarkable for serious and or possibly communicable illnesses also, as well as the injury situation.
Yeah, sounds like a scary situation.
But so far, nobody understands what's going on this show. You can't. Unless you not only watch this show, but every other show they do, and every goddamn tweet they put out, and everything they say on YouTube, and if you're on Tony's message board, then you would still have a hard time keeping track of what's going on.
That's the problem. Tony books for what he likes, and he also books for message board approval, not realizing that it's such a small minority of the wrestling audience that it doesn't matter. When it comes to things to help a company or grow a company, Ring of Honor had plenty of message board approval, and they didn't draw anyone.
Exactly. And the people on the message board were pretty much the ones keeping them from drawing anybody. They didn't want anybody to join their private club.
And then the funny thing was, half the people on the message board were the wrestlers. But anyway.
Yeah, under assumed names.
That's right.
But anyway, so you talked about Willow Nightingale. We like Willow, but nobody is producing poor Willow. Because if this was a live shot, I would never let these people on live again. If this was pre-taped, my God, that they didn't redo it. But there's Renee Moxley-Good in the back with Maria May, who doesn't have time to open her mouth before Willow comes in from off screen and gives her the big shoulder tackle and knocks her ass over tea kettle out of the frame, and then turns and looks at the camera and says, Maria is down on the floor to your left. But she cut the promo to the camera about Maria while Maria was at her feet on the floor, neither moving nor talking. It was like the shoulder tackle was a fatal blow. And
but at least she'll see the tape so she gets to hear what Willow had to say.
Yes, as soon as Maria watches TV again, and when she sees the program played back, she'll know what. Did you catch that, or were you zoned out by this point?
No, I watched it. I thought it was a good promo from Willow, all things considered. She was busted up. It's a good
promo if the woman was in TV land watching instead of laying at your fucking feet. Now that I've got you down at my feet and helpless, I'm going to put you on notice that I will thrash you at a later date.
You may have a point. That's the thing with AEW. Even when they get like a part of it right, everything around it is completely wrong.
Well, speaking of, if this next shit was right, then I want to be wrong more often. For one of the women's titles that they have here, Mercedes Mone with Camille against Emi Sakura. Emi Sakura. It's good to see that Margaret Cho found work.
Oh, stop it.
What the fuck? Mercedes looks like Mildred Burke all of a sudden next to Emi Sakura.
She's not dressed like Freddie Mercury anymore, but it seemed like she had like piano keys on her skirt. So she's still involved with music. Good to see.
You know what Emi Sakura would have if she had nuts on her chest?
Chestnuts.
You know what Emi Sakura would have if she had nuts on the wall?
Walnuts.
You know what Emi Sakura would have if she had nuts on her chin?
Taton Telly 2.
That's exactly right. Why do these idiots think that this Japanese outlaw girl bullshit should be on national television? They all look like they're doing a Saturday Night Live sketch. The funny faces they make and the poses and the sloppy work and the ridiculous outfits. And usually there's a size issue that they're 5 foot nothing and weigh 62 pounds. That's not the case here with the Japanese, Rosie O'Donnell.
Hey, are international wrestlers who are not living in the States, who come to the States, work for AEW, and then go back home, are they part of the putative class for the potential class action lawsuit where we're figuring out the other day the salaries and who's included, who's not? Like at Emi Sakura, if she lives in Japan and comes to AEW and works a few times a year and goes home, is she part of the 290?
No, because she would be an independent contractor that
Right.
unless there was some exclusivity here in this country on her contract or agreement that violated or crossed some line. But yeah, so they're paying these people. They're not even figured into those tens of millions of dollars they paid the other people. But it's just ridiculous. And they've been doing this for 5 years. Who wants to see these clown show pretend wrestlers? I can understand when old Twinkle Toes was around. Kenny loved them. They're all his personal friends, but he's not there anymore. Can't we get a little relief?
Is this a sign Kenny's about to come back?
Good Lord, what is he follow these around?
If Riho shows up on AEW TV within the next month, do you think Kenny Omega's absolutely coming back?
It would be a good indication. It's like she's the canary in the coal mine. And here comes the other fucking Tweety bird. But so, did you see where Mercedes tried to run old Emi Sakura's head into the turnbuckle and she missed the turnbuckle by a foot with her own head?
I did see that.
Her own fucking head. She could not run into a stationary target. She sold it. The thing was not moving. It was not on a fucking swivel. It was her head. The head is connected to her body. She should have been able to flung her fucking head into a goddamn immovable object.
I would have to think flinging your head into the turnbuckle is like one of the early things you would learn after learning how to, do the basic stuff in wrestling school.
Well, and they claim she's a trainer. The announcers say she trains. I can believe it from seeing all these other fucking half-priced fucking discount great value outlaw fucking women. This screaming Pillsbury dough girl, fat fucking bowl of Japanese pudding. At one point, she came up behind Camille and gave Camille 5 fake head rams into the railing. So now Camille's aura is ruined because she was selling obviously fake shit before she's ever been physically challenged. And especially by this middle-aged Ozempic patient. And then
I don't know if she's on Ozempic.
Well, maybe it's the opposite of that makes you gain weight.
What's that?
Lard injected directly into her veins, I guess. And then suddenly, out of basically nowhere, Camille tripped Emmy, and Mercedes got a half-assed chin lock with no leverage that looked fake as fuck because the fat girl could have just turned right out of it, and she tapped out. So then the heels went to beat her up further, but music played, and here comes Chris Statlander. And she had a brief flurry with Camille, and then Camille took a great bump over the top rope, and again, especially because they knew they were going to do this finish. If anybody here knew what they were doing, Emi Sakura would have never touched Camille. Because why would you let, again, this fat, dumpy, underneath, sloppy, fake-looking fucking girl have offense on Camille, who is the bodyguard of your big investment, and you know you're going to do something with your other big girl, Chris Statlander? What the fuck? And Chris Statlander and Camille could be a great deal, not in this company, because nobody knows what they're doing or how to build anything. And not to start it after one of the worst women's wrestling matches that's ever been televised. So they got that going for them. I don't know, did you like it?
No, of course I didn't like it. What kind of question is that?
Well, I'm trying to make sure I'm not the only one.
You know, Mercedes Moné is dead in the water, and then you add Emi Sakura. Tony's got the big TV money. What is the first thing who's the first person he brings into TV? Emi Sakura.
And now that I know Mercedes is bald, I can't not look for it.
Well, no, she's not bald. It's just she has her hair like taped
She's
down
wearing a fucking wig
over her own hair.
Well, if you're wearing a wig,
you're not bald.
If you're wearing a wig, you're either bald or close to it.
Well, no, she just wants
for heaven's sake.
She wants to look flashy. She needs to, you know, not everyone could be a sexy red.
Anyway, I keep waiting for her fucking hair to fall off.
See, that's what makes the matches good now. And why doesn't one of the, I was about to say one of the heels, but she's the heel. Emi Sakura was the baby face here. Now that I think about it, I didn't even realize.
Well, that's what I'm just telling you. All right, you want to talk about the Osprey interview?
Yeah, I guess this is one of the big things on the show.
Okay, so Tony Schiavone's in the ring with Will Osprey. Last week, our friend Take a Shit had jumped Osprey and Ricochet and ruined their match. It was double disqualification, thrown out, whatever. The question Tony's asking Osprey, do you think, was Don Fallis behind this? Did he send Take in there? And Osprey said, yeah, you know, we thought we'd get this settled, but now me and Ricochet are equal because of the interference. No, they should have never said that, because you're equal with a fucking underneath guy. Jesus Christ, know how to be a main event guy. Say we could have settled things, and I was on the way to winning when whatever, but nevertheless. Osprey says, I want answers from Don. Get Don out here. And Don comes out to the horrible one-chord music again. So is he back to being a heel now because he's been a jovial, beneficent color commentator? For some of the matches we've seen recently, he hasn't been heelish or done anything. He gets in the ring and he goes to hug Osprey, and Osprey refuses the hug. And then Don starts trying to talk, and the AEW audience has picked up the Dominic Mysterio thing, and they boo over him, so he has to yell over him. But Osprey's trying to badger it out of him. Did you send Take a Shit? Yes or no? And Don's like, you don't need to know. You need to know this. And no. Did you send him? And they go back and forth. And finally, Don says, yes. Yes, I sent him. Because you wouldn't listen. So I showed you who makes the decisions in the family. Brian, didn't he just let Osprey out of the family a couple months ago when Osprey went up and said, hey, Don, I'd like to be out of the family?
Yeah, that's what happened.
And then he was out of the family. But then Don asked him to team with Felcher for the tag team tournament. But since they didn't win the tag team titles, they no longer team. So why does Osprey need to listen to Don to begin with?
He doesn't.
Well, yeah.
I didn't realize you're actually asking. He doesn't. It's ridiculous.
And the whole thing doesn't make any sense. Who's the babyface? Who's the heel? Why is this guy on this guy's side? Why are these people teaming against these other people when they don't like each other? It has been incoherent. And so then Don said he was mad that Osprey wouldn't use the screwdriver. And Osprey was pissed at Don, and they continued breaking up. And then finally, Don slapped Osprey, and Osprey gave Don a flying Beal across the ring. And then there's Take a Shit. And he jumps Osprey. But Osprey starts fighting back, and then here comes Felcher. But Felcher is friends with Osprey, so Osprey won't hit him. But as he turns, Take suplexes Osprey, and then Don tells Kyle to stab Osprey with a screwdriver. Boy, I wonder if he took that flying beal across the ring with a screwdriver in his pocket. Can you imagine if he'd have stood up and had impaled his fucking heart? So Kyle refuses to stab Osprey with the screwdriver because even though Don is his manager and he's a heel, he's friends with Osprey, who's the babyface that's getting the shit kicked out of him by his other friend in the family, Take a Shit, who's a heel. And then Take a Shit just knocks the shit out of Osprey. And then Ricochet comes out, and Take a Shit bails out, and Ricochet gives the belt to Osprey, who is back up and apparently in possession of his faculties. What the fuck is going on here?
The Callis family coming apart, and you have to wonder if Fletcher will eventually turn on Osprey, as they've been teasing for a while, or if he'll also leave the Callis family, who apparently has members we didn't even know about. He sold several to Jake Roberts earlier this episode that we've never seen him with.
Well, he had those people just hanging out in the warehouse. He put them on clearance.
I don't know why anyone who watches AEW would take Don Callis seriously. He's a heel, he's a face, he's on commentary, he's just telling jokes with the other commentators. But he has a screwdriver. You know, all of this would have been a lot more tolerable if it was like anything else. You know, if it was a brick, if it was a rock like Darby used, that would be more tolerable than a something that could kill the person right away. It's bad. The Don Callis stuff has always been poorly thought out.
Well, let's go to our main event. We had a little bit more conversation in the back with people that we don't care about. And then came the big match, the tag match, Bryan Danielson and Wheeler Useless against Claudio Castagnoli and his friend Pac. So 2 of the 6-man tag team champions are teaming up against one of the other 6-man champion and their ex-friend Bryan Danielson. And same kind of match that you see here from these people all the time now with Useless, who they, again, is another guy. Even Garcia looks like Lex Luger next to Wheeler here. But another guy that, because he can do some moves that you could train a chimpanzee to do, suddenly he's going to be a pillar of the community and the promotion. And they are trying to jam him and shoehorn him down everybody's throats and into our hearts. And it ain't never going to work, but it doesn't have to, because they don't need to make any money. They just get paid the money, and they already have the money. But this degenerated into another thing with the plumber and this whole fucking whatever Tarantino film he's writing in his head. Danielson makes comeback on Claudio and suddenly sees the plumber and Marina Schaefer at ringside, and that causes him to run into Claudio's uppercut. But that's a 2 count. And then Pac gives him the 450 splash, and that's a 2 count. And then everything grinds to a halt. Because at that point, Marina Schaefer jumps up and draws the corpse referee. They had to have Knox involved in this. And Pac gets a hammer and goes into the ring and backs right up way far away from the guy that he was going to hit with the hammer, and draws the hammer back over his shoulder so he telegraphed a mile away that Wheeler standing there can grab it. And then they stared at each other. And while they were staring at each other, Danielson got the label lock on Pac and he tapped. And then Danielson is the one that jumped Moxley out on the floor, and they fought to the back, and the camera was following them. So you were in the ring, you were treated to either Marina Schaefer beating up Useless or Claudio giving him fake gut shots with a hammer while they were cutting to the back in the parking area with Danielson and Moxley doing another one of the many fights that they all do in the back of the arena. And then Danielson and Moxley fight back into the arena so that they can get in the ring and Danielson can clear the ring and stand there leading the people in finger pointing yes chants while poor Wheeler, that's been beaten in the stomach with a hammer, is laying behind him and he ain't noticing a goddamn, like, he don't know that Wheeler is living on this earth right at that point. And then right as before they go off the air, he turns around and goes, "Oh, Wheeler, you okay?" "Yeah, I'm just puking up blood." But what? That's what that was. Did I miss any of the fine points?
I don't think so. And, you know, there's been a real problem, and I thought about it during the promo earlier in the show, and I've thought about it for a while now. Bryan Danielson's devaluation, which is only partly Tony Khan's fault, a lot of it's Bryan Danielson's fault, continues. And there's a fucking record of it now. Look at the ratings when he's in the overrun or any of his segments. No one is excited to see him or anything he's doing right now. His matches have become long, plodding, boring things for the most part. Some people really still dig them, but it's a diminishing audience. He's got this feud with Moxley. No one cares. This is the only thing they've been doing on this show that's a real feud. Had no buzz. No one was going to watch to see it. Yuta is another one of these guys they're spending all this time on. It just isn't going to happen. Claudio, no one cares about. Marina Shafir is interesting because they've really not established what her role in any of this is. And then Moxley and Danielson. Brawling in, brawling out.
Moxley and Danielson were in the same group for years, it seemed like. And then he puts a plastic bag over Danielson's head and doesn't bother to come out and tell us exactly why he did that. He confuses us with all his blah, blah, blah. So there's no focus on why did this happen? What could Danielson have done to allegedly deserve this? Why did Moxley make this decision? Whose side was everybody on? We know that Wheeler was left in the dark. It's indie movie, acting of auditions for Moxley, who delivers these incoherent statements very convincingly. If you had a clue what he was talking about, it might be good.
Instead, he just speaks in riddles. And nothing ever goes anywhere. At least he sold a little bit for Danielson. I don't know if he sold too much for other people, but the Gardeners are here, and that's a perfect way to end this. That's AEW Dynamite, the go-home show for the pay-per-view.
Where everybody went home.
Well, Jim, let's talk about the AEW week of ratings. Of course, last week, as Dynamite was getting ready to air, they announced the deal, the media rights deal, the extension for 3 years and a 4th-year option, I believe, for $555 million or so.
Thereabouts. Who's counting?
I bet they wish they had one Bill Phil right now. But about $550 million or so. And then, what were the viewers going to watch the rest of the week? Or did they watch, I guess is the question. AEW Rampage on TNT, Friday, October 4th, 2024, 10 to 11 p.m. I believe that's the normal time slot.
Yes.
On average, 216,000 viewers.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
It is the lowest overall number and the lowest in the key demo since August 2nd. Just so you know the lineup here, Shibata and Private Party versus the Elite from 10 to 10:15 p.m. to 242,000 viewers. 10:15 to 10:30. Continuation of that. Statlander and Camille do an ad break. Harley Cameron does a promo. Zoe Lynn versus Camille. Post-match with Mercedes Moné.
Wait a minute. They brought Camille in to be the bodyguard of their high-priced acquisition, Mercedes. And not only is Camille getting beat up by some pudgy Japanese dough girl on Dynamite, but she's already wrestling and on the least important television program of the company? What the fuck is the matter with these people?
Well, again, the post-match with Mercedes Moné and Anna Jay promo, a Deonna Purrazzo and Taya Valkyrie promo, 210,000 viewers, below 100,000 now in the key demo with 95. Quarter 3, Queen Aminata versus Harley Cameron.
Oh, Jesus.
Picture-in-picture and full-screen ads. The post-match with Serena Deeb and Britt Baker, and then the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn did a promo in the back, followed by another ad break, 194,000 viewers, 83,000 in the key demo. And finally, 10:45 to 11 p.m., Big Bill and Brian Keith versus Kyle O'Reilly and Orange Cassidy. Picture-in-picture, post-match with Chris Jericho and Rocky Romero, 219,000 viewers, 88,000 in the key demo. Thoughts on that? Friday Night Rampage. You were the booker when there was a Friday night show on Turner Television, and you had other established shows.
Well, now wait a minute. Don't say I was the booker.
It's all your fault.
The booker. I was working on the creative team. And
That's right,
at the Friday night, and I was the co-host along with Jim Ross of the Friday Night Power Hour. And the commercials that we aired did 5 times these amount of viewers. So it's not just Friday night.
Well, that was AEW Rampage. AEW Collision, Saturday, October 5th, 2024, 8 to 10 o'clock, or 10 p.m., as we should say here.
Yeah, regular time.
269,000 viewers on average.
Good Lord.
A new low in the key demo for a non-preemption collision, and the lowest number since September 14th, and the second lowest ever. Non-preemption, excuse me. Now, they went head-to-head with Bad Blood on Peacock, as well as college football and baseball, and DoorDash, and everything else.
At All Night Gas Station.
Real quick, let's go through these quarters so you can see what was booked on this show. Quarter 1, 8 to 8:15 p.m., Johnny TV versus Darby Allin, post-match with Brody King, and then an Outrunners FTR video, 284,000, 83,000 in the key demo. That's how they opened. Grizzled Young Veterans versus Outrunners, picture-in-picture, recap, 254. Quarter 3, 8:30, 8:45 p.m., an ad break. Willow and the Conglomeration promo.
Willow and the Conglomeration, that sounds like a 60s fucking religious band.
Well, then Willow versus Trish Adora with picture-in-picture and a post-match with Mariah May, 249. Quarter 4, 8:45 to 9 p.m., Wheeler Yuta, Pac, and Claudio's backstage angle. An ad break, Mariah May and Christopher Daniels backstage angle. Wheeler Yuta... I don't know who this is. Wheeler Yuta versus Beef.
Beef?
All in caps.
Do they have beef with beef now?
All in caps, Beef.
Beef.
And following Beef is Hook with a backstage promo, followed by a recap, 259.
The meat hook brought 10,000 people back to the show.
And then they kind of rest into a pretty steady place. The Premier Athletes versus the Conglomeration, picture-in-picture, post-match with Rocky Romero and Mark Sterling, Lance Archer and Don Callis angle and ad break, 275 at 9 o'clock. 9:15, they go to 277 for Mercedes, Statlander, and Camille's angle, Hologram versus Commander versus Nick Wayne versus Action Andretti.
Why, he's still there?
With picture-in-picture. 9:30 to 9:45, the match continues. The Beast Mordos, Undisputed Kingdom angle. Zoe Lynn versus Chris Statlander. Post-match, Mercedes, Camille, Darby. No, excuse me. Darby has a promo and an ad break, 279. They close at 272 for Top Flight versus Private Party versus the House of Black with picture-in-picture. So before we get to Dynamite...
Well, now say what you want, but that's the most consistent program that they have aired. As they started at 240 or 284, the lowest they got was 249, and then they finished up at 272. So all they need to do is start out with nobody watching to begin with, and they won't lose any viewers.
If you have a show that you know doesn't have viewers, and it's tough to get them back in the door, the ones that were there before, what do you do? Because obviously from reading these lineups, especially Collision, it's a lot of stuff that ended up referenced on Dynamite or comes off Dynamite. And Dynamite spends a lot of time promoting Rampage and Collision. It doesn't seem to help. What do you do? I mean, you have this B show. Should you have Dynamite kind of exist on its own? Like, what would you do if you have a B show that people don't watch?
Well, they've got a C show that people don't watch and a B show that a lot of people don't watch. And they're at least getting rid of Rampage, and that's a good idea. And if they, what do they think they're going to do if they sell somebody else a new program? How is it going to be better than Rampage? With Saturday and Wednesday, they had an idea of making different talents. So if you like, the House of Black, then you got to watch on Saturday night or whatever. But obviously, they're not deep enough in talent. They've got plenty of guys and girls, but nobody's over because of Tony's insistence on booking to the smallest common denominator and throwing everything out there. Slow it fucking down. Because you're just wasting your time having Sockface rattle off a bunch of endless matches with a graphic on Wednesday that you're going to see on Saturday, because who can keep track of all this shit anyway? The smallest group that's going to even take more notes than I do. So slow down, calm down, concentrate on getting your top talent on both shows, and have things that happen on Wednesday continue on Saturday, and then branch off to the next Wednesday where they're going to be resolved potentially. Fewer guys that people can focus on in shit that matters and that interests them, interacting with the other talent. And then, eliminate the fucking bottom 75 fucking goofs that nobody gives a shit about that pop up every once in a while, and focus on who you think might draw you some ratings or some interest, and don't have them all hitting each other with sledgehammers and cricket bats every goddamn week. Because it's just endless. It's repetition over and over, with angles and chaos, and every match ends in the heels, whether they win or lose, they're going to jump the baby faces. Every interview, somebody's going to run out and get in a fight. Every backstage interview, somebody's going to run from 6 feet away that the person being interviewed never saw and blindside them. How many people have been run over with cars in this company? It's just, it means nothing because it's just miscellaneous chaos. So that's the problem. It's not the time slots or even the roster. The roster is too big, but the people that mean something don't mean anything.
What do you think of anything? And again, we'll talk Dynamite ratings in a second. What can be done to freshen up the show? You have a reality there that you're not going to draw a lot of fans to a Dynamite for the most part. Every now and then you'll get one, they get like 4,000 people or 6,000 people. But the crowds are going down, especially when they return to a market. The crowds go down. We just saw in NXT, there are small rooms you can get and make them look good. But the biggest thing that happened to WWE was Lee Fitting coming on as executive producer, and everyone who raved for years about WWE production realized how behind the times the top end of the production was.
Yeah.
Everything looked good, but it could look a whole lot better and connect a whole lot better. Feel just live all the time. AEW looks the same, even though, they have a different, Michael Mansouri came in after the fact, right? It opened with Keith Mitchell directing it, I think, right?
Yeah, and Keith retired from what I understand, and whoever this other fellow is that was working for Kevin Dunn. Okay, so now WWE's moved away from Kevin Dunn. They look like Steven Spielberg. And I mean, the show looks professional, AEW, but
I'm not saying it doesn't. I mean, they make some puzzling production errors at times.
Well, yeah, but there's only so much you can do with a 10 or 12 or 15 or 20,000 seat building with 2 or 3 or 4,000 people in it. And otherwise, as you mentioned, maybe this guy is good for government work, as they say, but maybe they need somebody else with a more, if you're making an independent film and you haven't got $100 million Hollywood blockbuster budget, don't put a scene in your movie where you're trying to part the Red Sea unless you can pay for it. Their indie movies can be artful and can look fucking great and can, change the game or whatever. But, if you don't have the budget for the multi-million-dollar CGI special effects or whatever, don't try to make that movie. If you're not able to put 20,000 people in a 20,000 seat building, don't try to do that. Try to give your thing a look that fits either your budget or your resources or your ability to draw people. So yeah, smaller buildings with an underground look and some cool avant-garde cinematographer that can give them a different look, that could help out.
I don't even think it has to be underground. It just has to look like there's energy.
Well, I say underground, like, like
Dabocado.
No, I'm not talking about raw underground. I'm talking about like a fucking underground indie record label that does really good music, or, Dolph Ramser, somebody like that, or whatever.
Dabocado.
Dabocado. That makes it look different, but you've still got to have the content, the substance. You can't just have a bunch of miscellaneous guys in Halloween masks running around doing cartwheels. You have to have something that people really want to watch because it's that person, it's that star, it's that angle, it's that program between two guys or whatever. And the booking is not going to change because Tony can't change.
And they still have fans that love them. And you know that the ticket sales really don't matter. If they mattered, maybe they would care more and pay closer attention to marketing, promoting, selling tickets, promoting shows that sell tickets. They care how many people buy tickets for the pay-per-view. But Dynamite, like you said, they're running these big buildings. Why not own it? We're doing an AEW theater tour for the next 12 weeks. Small buildings, exclusive tickets, the most exclusive ticket in wrestling. And every building has a different look. And customize it. If you get 750 of your most vocal fans in there, and it's a small building, you can make it look good. And make it look cool, just something. Instead of just these giant dead buildings. And everything feels dead. And there's some fans there that really like it. But when you're like the lone person screaming in a big empty building, it doesn't help the broadcast at all.
It's when the announcers have to go into the golf voice because they don't want to be heard over the silent crowd. And even Uncle Dave this week wrote an open letter to Tony Khan in the Observer, and disguised it as reporting on the situation, but it's a letter to Tony about Tony needs to. It's not Dave, it's Tony. Tony needs to do some things in this relationship for it to be able to work. Because even Uncle Dave is admitting the things that we have been saying. Of course, he'll still
for a while.
He'll put a paragraph in there like, now Tony has still made more money than God and he's a genius, but, and then he goes 4 more paragraphs about everything that's wrong, that we've been talking about is wrong, that they can't make stars, that their ticket buying patrons are dwindling.
Hey, can I ask you about that? The idea that throughout wrestling history, what are your thoughts on the first sign that, and obviously it's a different world now because of ratings, but the first sign that there's a problem is always ticket sales.
Yeah.
And it's been clear that AEW has a company-wide problem for a while. Again, I think sometimes they're able to pretend it's not there. Not everything's Wembley, but, they're about to get like 7,000 people for their pay-per-view in Washington. That's a pretty good crowd. Maybe it'll be 8,000. But then they're going to go back to like 1,500. And who knows how many of those are comps for Dynamite in a big NBA arena. So they kind of like lie to themselves that, look, we're doing great. Wembley. And then like the rest of the year, all those crowds together equal Wembley. Maybe. 52 weeks.
Well, no,
year,
this year they'll more than equal Wembley.
Yeah, this year they will.
Well, that's the thing. It is true. Ticket sales were always, before pay-per-view was even a thing. Ticket sales were your lifeblood because that's how you made your money. But you could tell when interest in the product was going down because the most dedicated fans, the ones who usually came and bought tickets every week or every 2 weeks or every month, whatever the schedule was, they started slacking off. Nobody paid attention to the ratings because it was all local ratings anyway, as long as your local station was happy. But the ratings usually, even till the end of a territory, were still massive by today's numbers especially, but even massive by those numbers because, as Teeny Jarrett used to say, wrestling fans are creatures of habit. So they would continue to watch the TV show because it's what they did every week and they had for years and years. And they wanted to see who was going to be coming to the Mid-South Coliseum Monday night or whatever. But there were periods where either the talent or the angles or whatever would cool off and your houses would be down until you could find a new guy to come in, a new angle to shoot, a new program to start with your top guys that would turn things around. You didn't really lose the TV audience until the place was ready to go under. And that didn't happen all that much. Think about how many territories actually, without being in a war or whatever, just suddenly went out of business in the territory days. Not that fucking many.
Not too many.
And usually it was because Sheik and Bruiser got too old and all their friends got too old or something like that. So the fans always watch the TV. But that's the thing. They can't keep these people watching the TV. But the ticket sales are the first indication, because if you can't get your most dedicated fans to go and see you live, then the average person that has a life and kids and don't really care and don't have time ain't going to sit down and stop everything to watch the TV show.
See, that's their biggest problem. There are a lot of fans who were dismissed, who didn't really like AEW, who really spoke for a larger fan base, who don't talk to wrestling fans online or anything. People ignored a lot of the things. And the first thing that happened was they burned off whatever you want to call them, casual fans. WWE fans willing to check out something else.
Because WWE sucked for a while and they were ready to see something new. And even with a few familiar names, they'd give it a chance.
That started things. The company drama, which didn't look good for AEW. I mean, look at the trajectory of the company since they aired the CM Punk Jack Perry footage. It's astounding. The crowds, the ratings, everything went down.
And again, there was two possible reactions from the people who knew what the whole story was and were on the internet and knew what was going on. They just thought, well, this is the stupidest thing they've ever done to show this. And for the people who didn't know, they didn't do anything to explain it, and it was equally as stupid.
And now they started losing some of their fans, some of the people who really loved the company and still buy a pay-per-view. They started saying, there are other things I could do on this night. And even their YouTube numbers aren't as strong as they used to be. It's the same thing. It's not wrestling. It's this brand of wrestling and the booking. There's only so much of an audience for big matchups, not based around feuds or titles or reason.
Well, besides that, can we say something out loud here that nobody else is saying? Because Dave will say it, even when he's saying, well, they need to create stars and they need to promote the towns better and they did this and that. They have great No, they don't have great matches. Then nobody, even the WWE right now, they ain't having a ton of great matches. It's there and the stars are over and, you know, they're on a roll. But the idea that AEW is just putting together great matches, but that alone won't, that is assuming that any knucklehead thinks that Hologram and the Cosmic Commander, what's his name? Whoever the General Zod, whatever his fucking name is.
Remember the Cosmic Commander of Wrestling? He was a manager in the Indies, Cosmo.
Okay, well, Kramer, whoever. The point is, these ain't great matches. These are not great wrestling matches. These are goddamn indie-rific clown show goddamn matches. And that's a big thing also because most people, even that watch wrestling programs, don't want to see two miscellaneous children doing gymnastics. It's just not a thing that a lot of people are going to want to look at. So these are not great wrestling matches. They're great exhibitions of tumbling or whatever the fuck they are. Or they call great matches where the guy stuck the fucking hypodermic needle in the other guy's face. Sorry, that's not a great match.
You know, we don't have an answer to this, just thinking out loud as Swami barks at the mailman. But Ricochet comes over here, and he has that match with Osprey. And it's a rematch of matches they had on the indies that fans went crazy for. We saw the memes. You remember the clips that were going around, 8 years ago, 9 years ago?
Yeah, it stunk then, and it was worse when they're 8 years older, but go ahead.
But I guess the AEW core audience is the fan that went crazy for that and wanted more of that style of wrestling. If you're a WWE fan who only knows Ricochet from WWE or NXT, and all of a sudden you're watching this and he's not having a match that in any way is competitive, it's more just, it's my turn to do something, now you do something. I could do what you do what I do. It's a show. And again, it's not a dream match to an audience that doesn't give a shit about what happens on the indies or what happened 8 years ago.
Yeah, no, the Rock versus Roman Reigns is a dream match, right? These are nightmare matches. So that's the point, is that they're saying, well, great matches alone. Well, no, a lot of these are not great matches. You just think they are because this is the kind of wrestling you've been watching and you've apparently never seen the good shit. And that's a small group of people. So I wish everybody would quit saying great matches alone. Some great matches would help. They had Punk and MJF, they had FTR and Robinson and Switchblade or Light Switch or whatever I can't even remember what I call him now.
Bing Bang.
Bing Bang. Walla Walla Bing Bang. You know, they have some great matches, but the people, or the matches that most of these people say are great matches, are not great fucking matches. They're rotten goddamn bullshit indie matches.
Well, look at the Bucks.
And that's what's keeping them from growing.
Look at the Bucks is the greatest example of that, because those are the matches that Dave's loved more than anything. They have, 5-star matches up the gazoo for matches that were just average.
The 13-time Tag Team of the Year in the Wrestling Observer newsletter.
But you could talk about how great you think their matches are. The crowds now are getting to the level Ring of Honor was when they left Ring of Honor and took everyone and started AEW with Tony Khan. So how great are their matches? No one's paying to see them.
Besides that, I've always used this example going back 25 years because it's always been true. And I used it with the WWF, say, okay, when we were in the NWA trying to fight the war in the 80s, okay, we're the Boston Celtics, they're the Harlem Globetrotters. We're serious about this. This is sport to us. It's a show up there. It's entertainment wrestling. That was the delineation. But the same thing is true. If the Harlem Globetrotters were still a goddamn major deal today, if Metal Arc Lemon and Curly Neal were still alive, you still wouldn't go to see them if they were in town 45 times, right? Because it's a show. You laugh. You like the wizardry of the passes, the dribbling routine, the bucket. Is it going to be water or confetti? But the basketball fans that are in love with their team and want to see basketball as a sport, in Boston, they'll go 45 times a year or however many home games they play. because it's always different and you don't know what's going to happen and you want to see your guy win. It's not just about watching people put on a fucking performance of gymnastics or simulated violence, or how many times can you watch somebody go through a fucking table?
Well, there's the thing too. We just saw Punk versus McIntyre. If something like that happened in AEW, it more than likely wouldn't be the only match on the show that was that violent.
Exactly.
This took months to get to this match. And I think with AEW, there's a lot of matches that are thrown together, and there's never a road to get there that people invest in or care about. And you can't have any more feuds about friendship or hugging, or you're my friend. I thought you were my friend. What happened? It's a continuing problem that doesn't get better, and it's not going to. And by the way, I'll throw this out there, throw this at you, and then we'll move on with the ratings. In terms of goodwill, at what point does it become good for Tony Khan to announce that he's stepping down as head of creative?
Oh boy, I'd love to hear that next week, because our job would be a lot easier.
At what point will something like that cause more people to check out the show? Because he's training the audience to not care. And it's now affecting his most hardcore base. And they're starting to hemorrhage. They're starting to hemorrhage the key demo.
See, here's the thing. I don't think that would really help at any point, because for the people who are most dedicated to the company and are going to watch or whatever, I think they still like Tony. And I think they still think that, oh yeah, he's a great booker. I'd do the exact same thing, which is the problem. All the fucking marks on the internet would do the exact same thing. But for the fans who either are like, this show sucks, or we don't know what's going on, or we're not going to watch anymore, or we've lost our enthusiasm. If Tony Khan said, well, I'm going to quit and I'm going to let somebody else book, would it make any difference to them? Because do they really understand why the show is not appealing to them anymore? Why they don't understand anything? Do they think it's the wrestlers' fault? Or it just, we don't like those wrestlers, or whatever? Or are they smart enough to the business to know, no, this is Tony Khan telling these people to do this shit, or letting them do whatever the fuck they come up with for an idea without bothering to, edit it or make sure it's any good? So would it really make any difference if Tony said, I'm getting somebody else? And then who would he get?
Well, that's a separate problem.
Who would he get? Will Wheaton? Jennifer Pepperday? Who's he going to get?
I don't think those would be good suggestions. Jim, let's talk about AEW Dynamite's ratings this past week. On TBS, Tuesday, October 8th, so Tuesday Night Dynamite, Title Tuesday, 9 to 11:10 p.m., a preempted airing, it says here from WrestleNomics.
Well, and also that is somewhat like Jumbo Shrimp and government intelligence. If it's preempted, it didn't air at all. It's an airing outside the normal time slot.
On average, watched by 329,000 viewers.
Ooh.
They are down 52% from last week, which was 680,000 viewers. According to WrestleNomics, this is the new low for the overall number and the key demo for any Dynamite episode, preempted or not. See, again, the way he uses preempted there, that means the blank screen got a higher rating.
Well, and I get it. That's possible. So Rampage 216, Collision 269, and Dynamite 329. If you add those up, you get 814,000. They were still 60,000 below the NXT program on Tuesday night, on a second week on its new station, because people knew that it was going to be there because of promotion.
Well, let's go to these numbers here, and I don't know what the lead-in was. I'm not sure.
Possibly footage of the evacuation. Everybody leave your homes. Get the fuck out now. Even if you're in Idaho, just get the fuck out of your homes.
Well, quarter one, 9 to 9:15 p.m. The Jon Moxley backstage speech The Bryan Danielson promo that was shot on a camcorder. The Darby Allin Brody King live angle. Jake Roberts negotiating with Lance Archer and Don Callis backstage. And an ad break. 450,000 viewers.
Okay, and at the same time, NXT was doing 858,000 for their quarter 5, and that was a drop of 33,000 people. So we were asking, we wonder if some of the NXT people went over to AEW. We may be about to find out.
Quarter 2, 9:15 to 9:30 p.m. The Daniel Garcia live promo and the start of Hologram versus Commander with picture-in-picture, 292,000 viewers.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to quote Percy Pringle. Oh, sweet Jesus.
103,000 in the key demo.
They lost, 158,000 people out of 450,000. They lost 33% of their audience from quarter 1 to quarter 2. How the fuck does that work?
Well, we go to quarter 3, 9:30 to 9:45 p.m., the end of Hologram versus Commander with the post-match.
So wait a minute. We forgot to compare.
Oh.
Quarter 2 did 811,000 people.
For NXT.
For NXT, as opposed to, well, the quarter 6, which was opposite quarter 2. The point is, at 9 o'clock, NXT had 858,000 and AEW had 450,000. And we asked the question, when NXT dropped to 811 in the next quarter, did 40-something thousand go over to AEW? And the answer is no. At AEW land, 158,000 people said fuck it and left.
Well, we go to quarter 3, 9:30 to 9:45 p.m., the end of Hologram versus Commander, the post-match with Jake Roberts and LFI, LFino, the Mark Briscoe backstage promo, the Daniel Garcia live promo. Well, I guess the other thing wasn't the promo, that was just him arriving. The EJ Duca, forgive me, I missed this. EJ Naduka Swerve Strickland backstage angle.
I don't remember that either.
That's what it says here.
I don't know who is EJ Naduka.
Nduka. I don't know. I missed that.
And I've seen his name in writing, but I've never seen him.
And then MVP and Shelton Benjamin's backstage angle and an ad break. 296,000 viewers.
Okay, and that's opposite 784,000 for NXT, and NXT had lost also.
That was Sexy Red. That was Sexy Red.
Yeah, that was the lowest rated quarter of NXT because of Red and her lack of sexiness, but they still didn't show up over at AEW. They just went somewhere else.
Well, we go to quarter 4, 9:45 to 10 p.m. The Mercedes Moné Camille backstage promo. Daniel Garcia being congratulated by wrestlers backstage for deciding to sign a contract. And the start of Saraya versus Nyla Rose versus Willow Nightingale versus Jamie Hayter. 286,000 viewers.
Ooh. And that was opposite 838,000 for Randy Orton and the fellow who couldn't hit the RKO.
Well, we now go to quarter 5.
Now they're unopposed.
The big 10 o'clock hour. Do you know where your children are?
They're wrestling on AEW.
The continuation of the 4-way women's match. The post-match with Mariah May. The Learning Trees confrontation with Rocky Romero. Jay White versus Cody Chhun. Hook and Kip Sabian and the Patriarchy's backstage angle. And an ad break. 334,000 viewers.
Well, so they picked that 48,000 people at the top of the 10 o'clock hour. Maybe some of the NXT folks did come over to see some more.
It has to be.
Wrestling, to see how the other half lived.
Quarter 6, 10:15 to 10:30 p.m., the Willow Nightingale Mariah May backstage angle, Mercedes Mone versus Emi Sakura with picture-in-picture, and the post-match with Camille and Chris Statlander, 323,000 viewers.
And some more said, well, that's enough of that. 11,000 to be exact. So they're struggling. Where are they going for the big finish?
We now go to quarter 7, 10:30 to 10:45 p.m., the private party confrontation with Stokely Hathaway, the Will Osprey Don Callis family angle, the Action Andretti confrontation with Top Flight and Layla Gray.
Was that I forgot who the fuck that was. I knew Top Flight, didn't recognize the girl, but I'd forgotten what Action Andretti looked like.
Layla Gray, how could you ever forget what she looks like? Fine.
Because I don't care.
Well, we go now to quarter 8. I remind you there's an overrun. 10:45 to 11 p.m., an ad break, the Jack Perry promo, and the start of Bryan Danielson and Wheeler Yuta versus Claudio and Pac with picture-in-picture. 296,000 viewers. 10-minute overrun, 11 to 11:10 p.m. Continuation of the match. Post-match with Moxley and Marina Shafir. 328,000 viewers. The lowest Dynamite in history.
And I'm surprised, honestly, that the overrun picked up, because what do they normally have at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night?
Movies for guys who like movies.
Well, that used to do big.
Yeah.
So they started at 450,000. At the end of regulation, they were at 296,000. That means they had lost 154,000 people, or just over 1/3 of the audience they started with, and then they made a slight comeback to 328,000 in the overrun. Whoo!
Now again, no, this isn't the only time they've gone against NXT, or that they had to move to a Tuesday night. It's never been this result, though.
A couple of years ago, they were making a big deal. We won the Wednesday Night War, because they were doing like, what was it, 100,000 people more than NXT. And then the network moved NXT, and we declare victory. Well, the worm has turned, and the shoe is on the other. I don't know if they've even got shoes on their feet now.
You know, the victory lap everyone in that company who does the public rah-rah for them was taking because of the media rights deal. It's like the Young Bucks victory lap after Punk was fired. You're doing it in empty buildings. No one's paying to go to see these shows. Less and less people are watching these shows. And it's all Tony, who's only getting busier.
Oh, and that's Uncle Dave also mentioned the 19-hour days that Tony is putting in, not only with the wrestling, but also with the football and the analytics and the statistics and whatever else he's doing. And as you said, it's only going to get worse. And, everybody's talking about, well, they're going to be profitable, and they're getting guaranteed money from a television network on the theory that they will bring eyeballs. And it's kind of a fucking embarrassing situation that the very week that they announce this thing, they do the lowest ratings in the history of their shows. And I'm saying, whether they're profitable or we do not doubt, and we fully admit they are taking in a shit ton of money. And they already had a shit ton of money. But the problem is, as we've established, they're also spending a shit ton of money. And whether you are profitable or not, if nobody wants to look at the stuff you're doing and nobody's watching it, then at some point, they just canceled SmackDown on Fox, and it was drawing 2 million people. Well, it's not worth it to us, what we're paying. Are these numbers or anything like them worth what they're being paid? And is WBD in 3 years going to go, what the fuck were we thinking? They're doing this to themselves. It's not like there's a goddamn pandemic and they can't have crowds in the buildings, or there's some horrible fucking financial crisis and nobody can afford to go and do anything. That won't happen again unless Trump gets elected. It's not exterior forces that are at work to hold AEW down. It's the shit they've done to themselves, because Tony has viewed this thing from the start as his plaything instead of a goddamn way to make money. And because of his billionaire father and the fact that they've already owned pro football teams and all the other things that they own or have invested in, minus the Black News Channel, it didn't work out. They know the people that will give them more money. But at some point, you've got to do something to justify the money that people are paying you to do something.
And again, that company has a lot of trouble right now and a lot of debt. If the AEW numbers, they're not going to be 300,000 every week right now for Dynamite, but if they continue to go down, if the key demo number continues to go down, if AEW, as it has, continues to go down in every single metric, it's going to look really bad, and then it'll be a story. Look at what they spent their money on when they were having all these problems.
And for all these wise asses go, well, they're haters. They love the WWE, so they want AEW to go out of business. I don't love the WWE either. Honestly, my opinion is all this fucking wrestling sucks. There is occasionally a goddamn bright spot like Punk and McIntyre in a Hell in a Cell, or what FTR used to do as tag team. But otherwise, I think all this shit sucks. I'm not pulling for anybody. I'm pulling for somebody to pull their head out of their ass and do this shit right. Which is why that I'm especially offended at these knuckleheads over here blowing their opportunities. Nobody's ever been willing to spend $250 million just to start a fucking wrestling company that will perform at 20 or 30% of the goddamn industry leader. Nobody has ever been willing to do that because nobody's ever been goddamn insane before. But now that they've done it, I'd like for it to have worked.
Well, there's still time. Tony may turn into a booking genius. You never know.
I think Eddie
Maybe it'll
Graham
just hit him. It'll just strike him one night.
Eddie Graham will rise from the grave before Tony figures out what he's doing.
Hey, with the flooding in Tampa, maybe the grave will come up. You never know.
Oh, good point there.